Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I am Amalgam Ash, and today I wanted to talk about the results of the Mega Minutiae Fall 2023 Game Jam hosted by me. Everything about this jam was unconventional, deliberately. It was on purpose. It was supposed to be unconventional. It was supposed to be different. It was supposed to be off by quite a bit. It was supposed to be unlike other jams, unlike anything that had a real total structure, in that I have a short list of engines that I say qualify, and that's just what goes. That the jam gets extended as far as I want because that's just what goes. That the submissions get to be chosen, or rather, within the submissions that are submitted, one gets to be chosen as a winner by the community, which is something I really don't like because it's never used consistently. We'll get into that in just a little bit here. And that I was also able to handpick a couple to win in addition to that, because I could. All of that kind of a power trip, perhaps, on my behalf. But even this video, which is going to be kind of an end recap of the whole jam and the experience for me, is unconventional in that I'm not going to film my face, which would normally be right here in the corner. The biggest reason for that is not because I want to be unconventional, but because I am still kind of sick. I'm getting over a really crappy 48-hour bug, and I feel like crud and I look like crud. And so rather than subject you to that horror, I'm just going to go without a webcam, and we're gonna go into this commando. That's not what that means, is it? Okay, anyway, so here are the list of engines that were allowed in this jam, and mostly it was kind of taken over by RPG in a Box entries, and I'm actually pretty happy about that. I haven't yet hosted an RPG in a Box only jam, so I'm really happy that there were so many representations, and it just shows me where the kind of biggest interest is in jumping into something like this random jam to try to represent not only what you can do, what an engine can do, but like kind of what your community can do. And I'm not saying that the other jams or the other engines allowed or the other participants weren't kind of mindful of that, but there was actual rallying over in the RPG in a Box Discord, much thanks to Justin for kind of posting about the jam and saying, let's show them, guys, what we can do with RPG in a Box. I thought that was really cool, and that is the ideal situation. That's what I wanted to see when making a jam like this. So the introduction here, I'm going to run these Mega Minutiae jams probably quarterly, I think. So I'll probably run the next one here for the first quarter of 2024 pretty soon. And the goal will always be the same, just keep people interested in different engines. We're going to go over all of the submissions, and if you were a submitter to the jam, you'll have a pretty good idea about how I felt about your entry. You'll have a better idea if you just watch the gameplay video. But now I have the perspective that comes with having played all of the entries in the jam, and I can kind of compare and contrast things between the entries, what people paid attention to, what people just kind of wanted to submit. We have a multitude of theme and challenges, which I need to reach out to the winners and get their input on what they would have added, because that was one of the prizes. And then challenge resources links here, and then just the rules. Everybody was pretty good about following the rules. I think only rule number 4, having permission to own and use the assets, was broken, and only for one entry, and that was from someone who had actually made their game in 2 different engines, and they were kind of already cognizant that the use of those assets would probably disqualify the second entry. So it actually kind of worked out. This was pretty well followed. Everything else here was well followed. They were all free. They were all made for the jam. They were all made in only the above engines specified. Nobody had a problem with the games being played on social media platforms. I really enjoyed that everybody followed the rules. So participation was really above and beyond what I expected. I really loved the amount of participants for this jam. If it just goes up from there, even stays the same, I'm happy. And the judgment period, I was able to push that as far as I needed to, which is something I will continue to take advantage of in the future. And we'll have to get into the submissions now and talk about each submission. The reason I want to do that is because this was a jam in which the participants judged one another. And to use that model of judgment has a lot of flaws, and while everybody did a very, very good job of everything else here, one thing that I really wish I could have seen more of is the community participation in Judgment. I will not be using this model of Judgment again. It will not happen, because we had a lot of great submissions, and I believe some of them were ranked fairly lowly within the community, but not because they received bad ratings, but because they simply weren't ranked. And I know Itch has a bit of arithmetic that it does, a bit of averaging and weighting that it does to try to correct this. So to some extent, to some degree, it is mitigated, but I don't think it's done in a fair way regardless. So honestly, I don't want people to join these jams and then get discouraged because their game wasn't played enough or it wasn't ranked enough by the other participants. And I kind of see now that having a lot of people and trying to encourage a lot of people to join and submit, even if they don't have a lot of time, and to just do what feels right to them, is also saying, and if you don't get time to play the other entries and give them feedback at all, then that's fine too. And while that was true for this jam, the amount of feedback that was given, while really, really good from some of the participants, for others, it was just non-existent. So that's not something that I fault anybody for, just to be perfectly clear. I'm not getting on to anybody's case for not judging anybody else's entry. It's an unfortunate side effect of just it not being a requirement. But that's okay, because in the future, they won't even have to spend any time playing or judging other entries, because we're going to make sure that we have a panel of judges. It will always be me and perhaps people that I select, perhaps the winners of this jam, for example. I don't know if they would be interested in that. That's just an example. But we had 11 qualifying entries. Let's take a look at each one of them in no particular order. In fact, we'll go ahead and hit them up by the results. Look at the overall, the fun factor, the game design, the challenge balance, the game narrative, and the theme presence. Really strange that the results were not available for theme presence. I don't get why Itch can show me some of this data, but not others. But if we look at the overall, we've got Dick Hardwood, Freelance Detective, from CF Leonhard, here at the top with 5 ratings. I think there was only 1 or 2 games, 3, 4 games that received 6 ratings. So that was like more than half the participants would rate the games that had 6 ratings, and that's pretty good. It's not good enough, but it's pretty good for a jam where the community are the ones judging. But anyways, this was a really good entry. It was complete. It didn't have any bugs that I remember. It was really interesting to play, and just the fact that we had multiple people to accuse, and then you were either right or wrong. But the more clues you found, then the deeper into the story you would be able to go in the latter half of the game. I liked that a lot. I liked CF Leonhard's jam submission to the RPG in a Box game jam that Omega Light hosted last year very much. I thought it was awesome. So I know CF has all the chops necessary to bring a game that represents what the Inchin can do by a skilled user in a very short amount of time. Very good stuff. Bear Barney's the Butcher of the Castle Black. This was a really fun game. It had a lot of good narrative beats. Excuse me, I'm just going to continue to sound disgusting while I talk about this stuff. The main character was really cool looking. She was really well designed. The fact that you could ride a horse was really cool. I only found one bug. The very end of the game was like almost frustratingly too hard, but it was really just more a matter of pace yourself and try to find the choke points and take out the enemies little by little, and then you were able to finish it flawlessly. So I know that it was tested well enough. There were combat elements that were researched, and there was some feedback that I had while playing that I think the dev took to heart for hopefully their next version, so that would be really cool to see. Bear Barney made a great entry here. I hope that this is like a story that can be continued, or this demo can be made into a larger story. Harvest Bakin, Stories of Yamanaka Village, the demo by Fighting Shroom. Fighting Shroom does not half-ass anything at all. Fighting Shroom is always grinding the time that it takes to put stuff into his games, his demos, his concepts, and this was no exception. There's a lot to this. There's a gameplay loop that is complete, and there's a way to get to the end of the limitations of the demo using that gameplay loop. That in and of itself is a lot of work, but there were also like an impressive amount of maps that were pretty large and well detailed. And then all of that aside, there is a complete farming and fishing system. There's foraging as well, but I'm more impressed on the farming system and the shops in town being closed and open at certain times. I thought that all of that was really well represented. The farming sim genre was just really well represented by this. I think if Fighting Shroom were to take this concept, and I'm being completely serious here, and continue working on it and polishing it up and giving it higher levels of gameplay loop, this could be a paid game that makes it onto large farm sim YouTube channels and really goes all the way as an actual commercial indie game. That's what I think about this. And it was the only game, I think, out of all these to use Darkhand's character generator 3D models. So good on him for using that for sure. I really liked seeing them used here. They looked wonderful in this farming village. So that's my micro review of Yamanaka Village. I hope that it continues. Nilbog's Tiny Adventure, this one I gave an award to. And, you know, if you didn't look at my itch community post for this jam, after the fact, the community chosen winner would be Dick Hartwood Freelance Detective, because just got the most scores. It's even if not everybody judged, or even if everybody who would have judged did have the time and inclination to judge, if they had judged and some other game had won instead, none of that matters. This is the one that actually did win because of the amount of ratings that it got and the scores in those ratings. So this is the winner overall. But I announced Nilbog's Tiny Adventure as a second place winner, simply because I loved this game. It was complete. It was a lot of fun. The gameplay loop was challenging, and it was really, really well balanced. This was made in RPG in a box, and none of it looks like it was made in RPG in a box, unless you're familiar with the tells, like the UI and the way that things drag around, things like that. But if you're not, this is actually very impressive because it doesn't look like it was made in the engine in which it was made, and that is always an accomplishment. So, Poleroti, you did fantastic, and I really loved the Nilbog representation. Loved Cornelius at the end, making an appearance as a boss. All of that was just lovely. This was hands down one of my favorite in the whole jam. I just loved everything about it. Lots of praise from me on this one. And I think it didn't require any assets that were super fancy. I think it just used Kenny assets, if I'm not mistaken. The very simple, like 2-bit or 4-bit assets, whatever that pack is called. Moving on, Felix. Felix was super charming. It was a very good length. It was based on game mechanics that were found in a magazine, but I knew these mechanics were from the fighting fantasy novels as well, so it looks like they're pretty popular fighting mechanics for game books, and I have to say they were done really, really well in the engine, which this was a Smile Game Builder game. Really happy to see Smile Game Builder love continue coming into these jams. I love Smile Game Builder as an engine. I love its simplicity. I love how fast it is to throw things together. I love how complex you can get with it if you really try and break through those limitations. And it is the perfect engine for a game like Felix. It would be lovely to see an entire campaign adventure of this sort. Timo always does great work and has a lot of fantastic jam entries out. There's not a jam entry that Timo's done that I think is not fantastic. Definitely check out Liam Davies' Private Investigator, The Case of the Miserable Clown, I think it is. That is a classic, and forever will be a classic in my eyes. Moving on to A World of Paradox, Forsaken Singularity. This had an incredible amount of jam theme presence. I think as far as just stuff that would be, if I were to rate the entries on the amount of stuff that they included that I had set in the jam requirements, this game would win. It had just about as much as you could have. It packed almost every single reference, every single theme, every single challenge into its game. And that's why I said A World of Paradox, Forsaken Singularity tied for second place by Absolute Anarchy. This was a really cool concept. The games within the game were all really fleshed out. They had a lot of lore behind them. They were all dark and bleak, and the overarching story was really cool. This is part of something that I hope continues to grow. I really do hope that this dev continues on with this project. I would absolutely continue playing. And this was made in RPG in a box, so another standout entry there. Moving on to Hyper Wizards, The Terrible Tower of Cheknyarn. This started out really fun. Unfortunately, I got to a part in the game where I saved, and when I came back from my save, everything was bugged. My characters were like not at all in the same place they were. I think in the next jam, I'm really going to hammer down on folks making sure they test their entries as much as possible, and that will include saving and then loading up your save. I don't know if this particular bug that I found is repeatable, and I don't want to insinuate that this game wasn't bug tested. It may have been bug tested a lot, but certainly as a roguelike or a roguelite, it definitely held its own in the jam. It did represent that genre as well as its engine very well, and the engine was RPG in a box. I would say actually it made it look as though it wasn't made in RPG in a box. It did look like it was made in something else entirely. So that's another win for this dev. They were able to make their game look like it was made in something else. So that's always a win in my book. Moving down to Steel Knight Brigade. This was made in RPG developer Bakin, and it was made in SRPG Studio. And at this point, I can't remember which one I disqualified. I disqualified one of them because they used assets from Front Mission 3. The one that I left here is the SRPG Studio one, and to be honest, I can't remember if that's the one that was supposed to be left in or not. I'm just not in the frame of mind to remember. But the Bakin edition of this was a lot of fun. I actually did not like the SRPG Studio one nearly as much, despite SRPG Studio being able to make a game that is very Fire Emblem-like. I will probably remove SRPG from the list going forward because I've come to understand in these last few years, I just don't like Fire Emblem style gameplay. And that's nothing against the developer. Kuma-chan always does standout work with his submissions, especially submissions that have a time crunch in jams like this. So I know that Kuma-chan's going to come with some great gameplay experience whenever he enters a jam that I'm hosting, and I always look forward to playing his submissions. But SRPG Studio, I think, is just not an engine that's going to be able to come up with gameplay that is suitable for me. And so for that very selfish reason, I'll probably remove SRPG Studio from the list of allowable engines. But that said, it was still paid attention to. There were a lot of story beats. I got to the end of both of the demos. They both ended the exact same way. They both basically were mirror images of one another, except they were made in completely different engines. So it was like you were playing a remaster of one or a remake of one in the other. And also, that said, the Bakin version didn't have the tactical gameplay. SRPG Studio has the tactical system built in, but Bakin is just not there yet. So those tactical battles were made into turn-based JRPG battles, but it was made to be fun because I was able to explore the city in 3D and look for hidden treasure chests and things like that. So I think the right decisions were made with the remake. Anyways, moving on. Someone stole my PC from 8 Pancakes for lunch. 8 Pancakes always has the wackiest variety of games out there. The lad is skilled with just about any engine you can imagine, and his projects and submissions range from just goofy antics that were thrown together to have fun to ambitious projects that had to be cut short because of time restrictions. There's always a hint of something greater in the subject matter. Someone Stole My PC belongs to the simpler, more narrative end of things, but it was fun to explore the levels that he put together. He cleverly put together a tavern that was kind of set up like a labyrinth by virtue of how the patrons were sitting at the tables and stuff. I thought that was really clever. And the storyline here was a lot of fun too. You never know what you're going to get when 8 Pancakes joins the jam, but you know it's going to be something that is calming, very chill, relaxing, charming, fun to play. Moving on to Floral Disaffect. Floral Disaffect is the reason, kind of almost the reason entirely why I'm doing this video, because this one placed last, and there's just no good reason for it to have placed last. Floral Disaffect is a game made in MV3D by FeverDev, who I would believe maybe tied for or come in first place, one or the other, for the amount of time spent on deving their game from the moment that they knew a jam was being hosted. FeverDev does not half-ass anything that they do either. They do have a very strange and surreal application of sensibilities that they put into their games. They make them very narrative driven. They also do put in quite a bit of combat challenge. So they're actually balancing two major gameplay elements for their submission in this jam, and both of those gameplay elements have a lot of attention paid to them. FeverDev does stuff that is, you could say, inspired by works like Serial Experiments Lane. There's a lot of surreal, there's a lot of Uncanny Valley, there's a lot of religion and technology, stuff that I don't have the brain power right now to extrapolate on, but I'd like to one day, especially once I've played more of their works. There are about 2 or 3 other, I think at least, games that I still need to play that FeverDev has finished up. But this to me is not a last place game, and this is a big reason why I would not want to use the community ranking system again, because I simply would hate for this experience to demotivate or discourage any of the, say, bottom half of participants here. Now, like, by virtue of rankings in general, somebody was going to be on the bottom half, right? And somebody was going to be at the bottom, but I really don't think that the scoring was just done fairly. Like, there's only 4 ratings here. I don't know what all of the different submitters had in mind when they played each of these games, what kind of rationale they used when they judged, but the results are really just kind of all over the place for me. If it's one thing that I wish I could change for the, I don't have to wish, I am going to change this for the next jam. The optional themes here are going to be a lot more mandatory. I'm going to have people start making sure they select a few of these. The games that were submitted that didn't have any of these selected were fine. They were fine, but I think it was more in the spirit of the jam to choose the optional themes and challenges. So I feel like those submissions that paid attention to this block here really created stuff that represented what I wanted to see out of this jam. Had some really nice surprises like Hyper Wizards and the Butcher of Castle Black for sure. And I'll have to make sure that there are themes that kind of facilitate games like this being able to be submitted. But anyways, I'm still playing Floral Disaffect. That is still something that has a lot of episodes left, so if you're watching my playthrough on that, thank you very much for doing so. I'm going to finish it on the channel for sure. I have kind of committed to finishing all of FeverDev's games on the channel. Now I need to reach out to CF Leonhardt as well as Pole Roti and Absolute Anarchy and discuss their prizes, which their prizes are: CF may create a new optional requirement that future Minutia jams can utilize, changing the course of this strange and evolving jam series, and may delete an existing requirement if they so choose. But Pole Roti and Absolute Anarchy can both each add a new condition to the list of requirements, further evolving the jam's later incarnations. So please, guys, get at me. Message me on Discord or comment in the comments below and let me know what you would like to do to change the themes of this jam series. And I hope that you guys will look forward to the next Mega Minutia that I host. I really thought this one was really cool. I hope that nobody was discouraged by the amount of rankings or votes that they got on their stuff or the scores that they got. I don't necessarily host these in order to say, here, everybody gets a participation trophy. That's not what it's about, but it is about bringing creators together in an event that will allow them to showcase what it is they can do, what their engine can do, what their community can do. And so on the merits of those criteria alone, I do think that a lot of folks won in that regard. And that is the kind of thing that I really do like to see. So guys, that's it for me. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that this provided some sort of elucidation for you on the Mega Minutia, how I viewed the entries overall, how I hope people will kind of view submitting to the Mega Minutia going forward, and what to expect from future jams hosted. If you like the content on the channel, go watch another video. I want this channel to grow in 2024. Amalgamash sometimes gets weird spurts of growth throughout the year that are completely unexplained because I don't get any higher of a view count and I don't get comments from anybody new. So I really don't understand. I got like 50 subscribers in the past few weeks, and I just have no idea where they came from. Who are you people? Who are you people? Anyway, thanks for watching. Please comment anything you like down below. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great rest of your day, and bye for now.